think we're okay.
Okay. Okay, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call the meeting to order. And I'd ask you all, if you can, to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we will now commence with the roll call. I'm Marty Schwartz, Chair of the Commission.
Retta J, Commissioner.
Carolyn Durkee, Commissioner.
Joe Krejci, Commissioner.
Cheryl Jones, Commissioner.
And
Herb Limecooler, visitor.
with our guest.
And also John Wynn, Marty's also here, John's in the back gallery.
Hi, John.
And Brenda Steele, Director of Bigelow Center.
Okay. All here and accounted for. You should have all received the June minutes, so we'll entertain it.
I think we did not receive.
Oh, you didn't receive them?
So I was just gonna move that we table it to the next meeting.
Oh, okay. Thought it was on me.
Well, you can get it. So,
Okay, so I think we should table. We have no choice actually, except to table it for the next meeting. Okay, so that was a motion. I guess we could use a second on that.
Second.
She's seconding it?
No, I'm.
Oh, she's on, I know.
Who's she on?
Yeah. Yeah, I got an email that she's coming on. You made the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, second, okay, so great. So it was made by Joe and seconded by Cheryl. Okay, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes.
Marty, I just want to make sure Petunia can hear us. Petunia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great,
Hear
so
you too.
Petunia's here.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
So we are very pleased to have with us this afternoon Herb, who is the Fairfield Senior Advocate and Affordable Housing Commissioner. And, we've had some questions that came up at our last meeting. So Herb has been good enough to agree to join us today and give us some updates regarding what's happening with 8-30G and all those good things. So Herb, perhaps you'd like to sort of do an introduction of.
Absolutely happy to do that. And Katrina, good to see you again. We saw you at the Affordable Housing Committee a few months ago.
Yes, good to see you. too.
And John Wynn, my colleague from
This is not a.
Fairfield Senior Advocates and Age Friendly Fairfield is in the back. And John, did you get a copy of the bullets that I give the commission?
I think I saw them from the other day when we reviewed them.
I
It
think
might
it's,
not be the latest version. Brenda, do you have a copy I can give John?
Yep, they're all right
Oh,
here.
okay.
They're all right, everything's right here.
Okay. Listen, it's great to be here with everyone. So I'm currently the chair of the Affordable Housing Commission and have longtime coordinator director of Fairfield Senior Advocates. And John and I have been very active in Age Friendly Fairfield with Brenda and Julie and a number of the rest of you, including of course Joe. So what I wanted to try to do is to talk a little bit about 830G, as Maureen suggested, the situation that we find ourselves and what the implications are for the town and what the implications might be for the commission going forward. Can you hear me okay, Katrina?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, excellent. So we can maybe start with the bullets that I gave you and we'll walk through these and you can stop me anytime. Please do, make sure I'm clear. So state law 830G, and we can talk about that if we need to in terms of what it is. There are basically two tests. There's an income test if you qualify being below 80% of the area or state median income, whichever is lower. That's actually adjusted somewhat depending upon the size of the family. But the 80% corresponds to a 4-person family. So there's an income test. And then there's also a test in terms of how much that eligible individual or family can pay for a unit. So it's a family of four, it's less than 80% of the area median income. And that if it's a family of four, that family of four cannot pay more than 30% of their income on it's commonly rent, or it could be mortgage payment plus certain utilities. That does not include cable television or cell phone, but it would include, for instance, heat. And I think heat and electricity. So the two constraints that kind of come together here. And it's a pretty complicated process, a lot of moving parts to it. But that's basically the way it works. This thing goes back to, I think, 1990. And it's very complicated. It's been, the last time it was revised substantially was 2017. There's a lot of horse trading on both sides in terms of coming up with a compromise. And there were some provisions that took place then that actually have sunsetted since then. So there was additional credit for senior housing, for instance, that has since sunset. There was a 5-year sunset associated with it. So there has not been a significant effort to modify, or a serious resulting effort, conclusion to modify it since that time. It always comes up in the legislature. Politicians always rail about it. It's an easy dog to kick, so to speak. But it was a long-term, it was a compromise developed over time, basically between units that felt like they were being shortchanged in terms of providing all of the affordable housing, towns, and in that case, I should say towns that were providing all the affordable housing, and towns that were not, for very good reasons, but it was a compromise worked out by politicians going back many years. And so we have it. And I like to say in all candor that I think if we lived in New Haven or Waterbury or Bridgeport or some other places, we might have a somewhat different perspective, many of us, about 830G than we have living in Fairfield. So it's a compromise. It's the type of thing that has a coin with two heads, I guess, in a sense. And that's where we are. So eligible units for calculation of the moratorium for 830G have to be built after July 1st, 1990. And we do not have many units in town that are actually eligible. That's a problem. We've got 22,000 units in town. I think at the time that we did the 2022 affordable housing plan, there were less than 1,000 that were, far less than 1,000 were actually eligible. So that's the big problem for us, is not many of our units are eligible because most of our housing is older. Eligible credits for seniors seniors are limited to post 7190 construction. And we have only one unit senior development that was built after that time, and that's Greenfield Commons. So the way it works out, there are only 5 points that we would get based upon senior housing. And the way this works is, and this is kind of outlined in the affordable housing plan, you get different points for different scenarios. So if you build a senior housing unit, you get a half point. Your senior affordable housing unit, you get a half point. If you build one for a family, you get more points. If you get rental, you get more points than if you build ownership units. And it's kind of a complicated thing, but we need 2% of the households of the units in town. We need 2% times that number of units to get a moratorium. So the way the math works, there are about 22,000 units of residential units in town. 2% of 22,000 is 440 units. The good news is that we will have 440 units within a couple of months. We're waiting for certificates of occupancy on 2 units, 2 fairly substantial developments. 5545 Park, I think, is one of them. And the other one is on Black Rock Turnpike. And so once we have those, we will be able to submit this moratorium. And then there will be a 6-month waiting period. And there'll be processing that goes on at the state during this period. And it's also sort of like the last warning to developers. If you want to build an 830G unit, you better pony up. So that's required. So if all goes well, maybe 8 months or so from now, we'll have the moratorium. It'll last for 4 years. During that time, we will have to produce an additional number of units. It's less than 2%, but it's a substantial number of units. We'll have to produce those to keep a moratorium. If we're successful, at the end of 4 years, we'll get a second moratorium that will last for 5 years. So that's basically the way the process works. You've got to keep moving. You've got to keep building units. Now, while we all, or many of us, complain about the 830G units, the fact of the matter is that we would not have gotten the moratorium if it weren't for these affordable units that came with the 830G developments. So a substantial percentage of the units, of the points, substantial percentage of the points that we've garnered have come from these affordable units that have been embedded in 830G approved developments. So going forward, there are going to be few, if any, 830G developments built, which means it's incumbent upon us to get the units from other sources. And we get those from various different potential sources. One is if Carol Martin at the Fairfield Housing Authority can identify a unit, a development, and build units, they would qualify. And typically the majority or all of Carol's units are affordable. So that would really be great. We have something called inclusionary zoning in Fairfield. Any development with 10 units or more that is required to have 10% affordable. So if a developer builds a 20-unit development, 2 of those 20 have to be affordable. If it's 18, it's 2. We round up right now. If it's 11, it's 2. We're looking at reducing that threshold below 10% to make, or I'm sorry, we're looking at reducing that threshold to below 10 units. And various towns have different thresholds that have inclusionary zoning at all. We're looking to maybe make this better for us. But, you know, the situation is that if you make it too difficult for developers, they won't build the units. So they won't build the development. So we have to, there's a trade-off between what we can extract from the developer, what's reasonable, and what the requirements are. So we're looking at that. That would be another source of these units. And then just building middle housing. So duplexes, triplexes, quads, for instance. If we can build them and we can deed restrict them, that they would contribute. And we've got a couple of projects in process right now throughout the town that actually contribute to this. So the Habitat for Humanity units on Greenfield Street. So there are 2 duplexes there, are middle housing that contribute. We also are redeveloping lots at in Veterans Park, Parkview Commons, and those will be affordable as well. And at the Affordable Housing Committee, we're always scrambling to try to find new opportunities. There's one other potential source that's emerged. And through another horse trading effort at the legislature, there's a bill, I think it's called, it's 5474. It's a law that now in effect, and it was a trade-off on both sides, and it includes some features that will help us. So we will now get credit, we will now get moratorium credit from middle housing. So again, duplexes, triplexes, quads, and probably up to 8 units or so. We'll get credit for units that we construct, even if they are not affordable. So this is something that not everybody wanted, but it was part of the compromise. So that helps us a lot, I think, in terms of our potential to generate a subsequent moratorium. We're also now able to carry over units that went over the 440 threshold to a second moratorium, and that was not, we were not able to do that before. So if these two, don't hold me to these numbers, but if these two developments now produce a total of 475 units as opposed to 440, we can carry over those additional 35 or whatever units to a second moratorium. That's also a result of this law, and it's also a change. And it's also something that certain constituencies in the state did not want, that they agreed to because of some of the other provisions of this legislation.
Or just quick, what is a quad? I'm sorry.
Oh, 4 units, sorry.
Okay, I thought it was. but I
It's
didn't-
my term, Joe. It's not an
Okay, so
official.
not 2, it's 4 units.
4, yeah, so two, I think 2s, 3s, 4s, I think, and going a little bit beyond that, but not 25 or 35 or whatever, so middle housing.
And do the points differ depending on whether they're 1 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom in those units?
Sure, I'm not sure, and I'm not
Okay.
sure we've even gotten that far. I don't even know how what the stipulations are in the legislation, if they go to that level of detail. It may require interpretation by the state, but we'll monitor that. We'll let you know.
Okay.
So I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm just trying to sort of cover the points that I'd outlined here. Maybe this is a good time to pause and see if there are other questions that anyone has, including Katrina.
Have they included the new one? Well, it's not really new, but it's down in the historic district.
No, so the way it works, Carolyn, is you have to have certificate of occupancy, so it has to be open for business.
So that's going to be,
That'll be 2 years down the road before that's done, I'm sure. And there are others that are in the pipeline as well. So we'll have units from those. We'll have some spillover from the ones that got us over the hump. So to some extent, we're on our way toward a second moratorium. We have more work to do. But beyond that, there's more to this than making the moratorium. The fact of the matter is that we desperately need housing options. And in fact, one of the articulated 2 major goals of the Affordable Housing Plan was to produce more housing choices, more housing options, more units for various elements. So seniors, millennials, members of the workforce, whoever needs it. And so the 2 major goals of the 22 to 27 Affordable Housing Plan were more choices, more options, and also meeting the moratorium. But I mean, anybody that follows real estate knows how difficult it is now for people trying to buy homes in Fairfield, almost anywhere. How limited the choices are, and even for people that are in the seemingly enviable position of being able to sell high, where do they go if they want to stay here, especially?
I know one of the concerns we were talking about was the fact that you had alluded to it too, that it's only 2% for senior housing. And yet we feel there's a considerable need for that as well. So why, out of curiosity, do you know why that is such a low percentage for senior housing?
The half a point for
Yeah,
senior housing.
right.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so the fact of the matter is, I talked, after we talked at the Age Friendly Fairfield meeting, I spoke with Mark Barnard about this specifically. And he confirmed my recollection, and that is that the state housing department wants to build units for families. They don't feel as driven to build them for seniors. And so that's where that comes from. And so we would need to really overcome that. And that would require like a lot of long-term education, I think, together, but that's where it comes from. It comes from a belief, on the part of this state apparatus that the greater priority is building the affordable housing for families. And another thing is as part of doing this affordable housing plan in 2022, we did a pretty extensive survey that was advertised through the then First Select Woman's newsletter, and we had 1,500 responses. We had more responses to that than we had the Age Friendly Fairfield survey. And we looked at the data, and the data indicated that, and they gave people options in terms of how you responded. So in terms of your attitude toward affordable senior housing, you could say, I like the idea, I don't like the idea, I have no opinion. You'd say more people than not welcomed senior housing that was affordable. So a plurality approved it. A plurality disapproved of it for families.
Wow. Tell me about it.
So Fairfielders are basically saying, we feel better about housing for seniors than we do about families.
When we started the Affordable Housing Commission way back when Jackie started, it was like, oh my goodness, you can't do that. Now it's obviously moved forward, which I really feel is a good thing. It means like that we didn't waste our time.
I think you're absolutely.
Finally managed to move on, and that's really a great thing.
It is, but I think what this demonstrated to me is there's still a lot of pent-up apprehension, a lot of pent-up concern about affordable housing. Why do we need it? Or, maybe we need it, but we don't need it in my area. So I think that then incumbent upon us to continue to do more and more education.
I think the terminology is an issue too. I
I
think the terminology
It is,
is an issue, because I remember when we started the Affordable Housing Committee, in the particular neighborhood that I was involved in, the people that wanted to build affordable housing were using the criteria of, how do I say it? The paycheck of the people that were already in these homes. And so there was a terrible backlash, because if you earned $40,000 a year, and this housing unit of 40 units in the neighborhood, those people were earning $40,000 a year. That was really a nasty issue.
Yeah, that's
And hopefully
understandable.
that's gone now.
It's understandable why people would react that way. But I mean, right now, this 80% of area median income is in excess of $80,000. So in other words, if family of four, if you earn, say, closer to 85 than 80, and it's probably close to 90 now. So if you earn family of four, $90,000, you're eligible. So it's everybody. I mean, it's a very widespread need currently. And I think when we have these discussions, this outreach, this education, they need to be listening sessions. We can't be talking at people. We've got to be talking to each other about this and understanding the situation better, understanding everybody's points of view. So one of the things that we're trying to do in the Affordable Housing Committee is to do more of that. And, but there's plenty of work to be done. So other questions right now, or?
I mean, is there anything that we could do as a commission to sort of move this forward, especially in regard to senior housing that we feel, could maybe?
I think that's a great question, Marty. And so right now, I talked about the Affordable Housing Committee. That plan. And that plan's on the website. There are 14 objectives. They fall in the category of tier 1, tier 2. And some of the tier twos appear to be just as important as the tier 1s. And then there's also a group called supporting initiatives. So one of the supporting initiatives, for instance, is getting these units deed restricted for a longer period of time. But there are 14 objectives, a lot of work to be done. But there's also the Plan of Conservation and Development, often known as the Master Plan, EOCD. And that's under active consideration right now. And there will be a near final draft that emerges probably before the end of the summer. And then there will be one or more public hearings in the fall, at which time we all have an opportunity to make our thoughts known. This is a great opportunity to talk about senior housing. And so, you know, there'll be a chance to write, to speak, and we should probably talk more about strategies behind that. So there are some provisions in this plan that I think are more favorable. So right now, there are some zoning revisions that are contemplated. They're modest. I think they're very modest. Personally, I think we could have gone a bit further, but you know, we're trying not to upset the populace. And so most of the proposals affect what are known as Zone C, Zone B, and Zone C. They tend to be along the post road area and not in the middle of neighborhoods. So I live in a Zone B, on a Zone B street, but I'm near the post road, and I completely understand it in terms of where I am. I think if I were in the middle of Greenfield Hill, you know, then people there would probably feel somewhat differently about rezoning, but there's some modest rezoning proposals that are contemplated in it. There also is a provision that would call for a study of middle housing, of how middle housing could be further developed. And to me, that's a key provision. I'm really interested in that because I think we could go further than probably what's proposed right now. There's some proposals that would enable more mixed use housing. So right now, for instance, I think 50% of the ground level of a building along, let's say, Kings Highway can be residential. This would expand that percentage as long as the building is not, you know, right in front, you know, on Kings Highway. So it's just being a little bit more creative in terms of how we leverage the space that we have. So I think it would be good to take a look at the plan. It's on the website. There's a draft on the website right now, and a near final one that comes out before the public hearing should be emerging. Like, you know, I've been told before the end of the summer, but it's going to be soon, one way or the other. So that's certainly something to do, I think. And I went and I actually went on Chat GPT or Google Gemini, I forget which one, and I inquired as to what can a town do to enhance its senior housing, and I got kind of the standard list. And I can send you that, but I think a lot of those things are things that we're doing already. But one more thing I think we should probably think about doing, and that is talking to our residents, surveying our residents, and finding out what their needs are, what their preferences are, what do they think. So maybe, you know, some sort of a survey that could potentially be jointly commissioned, age-friendly Fairfield housing domain, and maybe Fairfield Senior Advocates. Maybe we could somehow team up in terms of a survey that would be focused on when our senior population, or whatever population we feel is appropriate, and to find out more about what people's needs are. I mean, I think we have a hunch. We each think we have an idea, but at some point that ought to probably be done.
Any other questions of Herb?
I just said, well, I'm just curious, with some of the our own legislators, for example. I know a lot during campaign time, they all take various positions on 30G. And I'm wondering with the current legislators we have now, what is their position with respect to this law? I mean, are they looking to amend it, get rid of it, or what? I was just curious. What?
I think they would all say it's extremely difficult to change it, Joe. They'd love to see it modified in our favor. They all also work with people day in and day out that are on the other side. And I think they probably have a bigger picture perspective of what's going on in the state as a whole. I think they'd be amenable to change, but I think they all would view it as a difficult thing to change. Now, the question, of course, is how much energy do we want to dedicate to that given our own situation? So if we're looking at it from a standpoint of what we think is good for other towns that don't have a moratorium or are close to one statewide, because if we're altruistic or whatever, we might have one perspective. If we're looking at it from a standpoint of Fairfield, then I would say it's maybe not the same priority that it would have been a couple of years ago. Now that we know we're there, now we know we're there. The key priorities for us, I think, need to be is, do we have a plan? Do we have a plan for maintaining the moratorium, extending the moratorium, I should say, and then also producing these units that we all need?
And how does disabled housing play into it with the percentages? Is that,
So I don't think any percentages
okay,
show. What we've done historically is try to push for accessible units, certain number of accessible units. But I think that's something else that probably bears study, is to see how they are treated. I can't say I've got a ready answer there. It's probably the type of thing that we ought to delve into. So it's a great question.
I was wondering
if-
percentages or numbers associated with.
Yeah, I don't think there are numbers. Marty, I don't know of number. It's not something that we manage at affordable housing on a sustained basis.
Sure, I was just wondering if I added an ADU onto my house, do I then become a duplex?
No, you're not a duplex, but no, it wouldn't be considered a duplex. That would be considered.
Accessory dwelling,
it would
like
be
an in-law
considered-
suite,
Yeah,
for
it's a
example.
use code. It's code 1017.
No, I don't want to
That
make
count as
proposals,
middle
but I mean,
housing?
I don't mean to get a call battle.
Great question. A great question. So would an ADU qualify? I doubt it, Joe.
Okay.
But most of the ADUs that we have are not deed restricted. Now, most ADUs traditionally have been for family use, but you could deed restrict them. And so if they're deed restricted, they would then contribute to our bogey. And speaking of ADUs, we've done two great seminars, I think, the last 2 years in November, right after election time at the museum. We plan to do another one. And at the Aging in Place Fair that's coming up, we'll also highlight those as well. Great. John, is there anything that
I'm not sure if an ADU would be able to be deed restricted by itself. Deed restriction, I think, would have impact on the primary property that's the ADU is part of. So I don't think they're like separable types of things that you could deed restrict an ADU component and not deed restrict the primary residence.
I thought you could, so I thought you could, so we'll have to check that out, and get back to the committee. And we've always talked about it as if you could, but it's really, it's a good thing. It's something we should clarify. I think that's most of what I had. Mark, I'm glad you brought up, because the one thing I did want to address was the role of the of the committee, of the commission might be going forward. And you know, what our priorities might be, so I think it's great that you did that. I would just say that we, and Joe can help us with this, we've got an age-friendly Fairfield housing domain. Of 5 of us that are working in that area right now, we need it to at least double that. If you can identify people through your travels who are interested in participating, we'd love to have your involvement. Joe can give you updates in terms of how that's progressing, but we really do need making special effort because it's probably the most, it may be the most challenging of the domains that we have. So yeah, and I guess, you know, a lot of this can be, the commission should also give consideration how much effort can we put into this, you know, to what extent are we willing to roll up our sleeves and get involved in this process of fomenting senior housing. Because it can be some work to do some of this.
I mean, we were talking amongst ourselves about possibly getting legislators involved and trying to advocate, but from what you're saying, we're probably not going to get very far in terms of
Well,
getting involved with that.
you know, it might bear some discussion after the election. We should also see what the environment looks like at the state level. You know, it's always conceivable that it could be part of some sort of compromise associated with the legislation that, say, groups like the Segregate Connecticut have been trying to get across. Right now, I just don't see it as being something that's got legs. And Mark said the same thing to me. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't speaking out of school.
But I like the idea of a survey with getting different groups together because I think that would also send a message depending on what is found through that survey.
That'd be great. And if the commission has a subgroup that would like to meet, you know, we can arrange something. You know, John and I and our colleagues at Senior Advocates, and we can get somebody from the age-friendly Fairfield housing domain. We could arrange a meeting to talk about possibilities if you'd like to move that way.
So, any other questions?
I just have one question. Is Nordstrom Avenue still deed restricted? Remember that was the old housing project in the 80s, I think?
Yeah.
We did.
Do you remember what that was called?
Overbuilt housing. It was under the community, it wasn't Mark, I think it was Steve Chipman at the time. There were several units on Nordstrom Avenue, right across the street from what was Kohl's.
There are no units on Nordstrom. Well, there's a development called Greenfield / Nordstrom. It's 14 units for which we get credit.
I'm sure that you get credit for it, but it was one of the original things that we did. And I was just wondering, since it's been since the 80s, if those houses, they were
Well,
duplexes, if they were still.
It wouldn't be on my list. I mean, we wouldn't be getting any credit if it was built in the 80s.
After 90.
We would not get any moratorium credit if it were built in the 80s.
That's really too bad because that was quite an issue that we had.
It is, well, that whole element makes no sense. The July 1st, 1990 element makes no sense. So, but the key thing is the moratorium points. So when you hear people bring up the idea of we're never going to get to 10% affordable, just tell them not to bother because it's true. It will not happen in any of our lifetimes or our children or grandchildren's lifetimes under this law. It's not going to happen. The key thing is keeping the moratorium as far as the freedom. The larger question, of course, is getting units because we need the units. People need choices if we want to keep them in Fairfield. And there's a tremendous cost to losing seniors to the town. And we've done a lot of work in that area. The cost of losing a senior household, approaches are probably by now exceeds, the expected cost probably exceeds $10,000 a year, like an annuity, because of the education costs. So anytime we lose a senior household, all things being equal, we more likely are out $10,000 a year as a town. So it's,
And with what Carolyn brought up, if the town went in and redid those, would we then get credit, or would it have to be built from the ground up?
I think, well, I think we would get credit,
Okay,
but what I don't know is to the extent which we would, that's another thing we should check out, is to what extent they would need to be rehabbed. So that's another one we should check out. I wasn't able to make notes on all this, but I'll be able to see it in the recording. So we'll follow up on these items.
Thank you very much for coming here. And thanks for all the work.
I have a question. Can you hear me? It's Katrina.
Go ahead.
You mentioned 2 projects that are slated for occupancy. You said Park Avenue and Black Rock Turnpike?
I think those are the two, 5545 Park. And there's also a development on Black Rock Turnpike. It might be 528 Black Rock Turnpike.
Mhm. How many units there?
5545 is a big one. Let me check, see if I can check it. Give me just a second. 5545 is 100 total units. 30%, 30 of those are affordable. 15 would be 60% and 15 would be 80% affordable. The other one, I think, is 528 Black Rock Turnpike. That is 23 units. 7 of those 23 would be affordable. And you know, 3 80% and 4 60%. I think those are the 2 units that'll put us over the top. The 2
And
developments.
the one that's at Park Avenue, you said it's 100 units and 30 units would be affordable?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
There was gonna be a development on the corner of this Black Rock and Mirror Parkway, and that's now gonna be a medical facility. Weren't they talking about affordable housing there at one time?
There would have been affordable, it would have been a large, you know, so it would have, I didn't remember it was an 830G unit, but 830G development, but I think it was. So they would have been, any 830G unit would be, development would be 30% affordable.
But obviously that didn't
Yeah,
happen.
they reverted back to the prior use.
Again, thank you so much.
Oh, happy to be here, always.
And thank you very much for all the work you do on behalf of the town of Fairfield, affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
It's good to be with all of you.
Thank
We'll
you.
follow up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to old new business. There were a few things that we were talking about. Youth Services Board, you had some thoughts, Loretta, in regard to that.
Yes, we had talked last month about the town charter is coming up for review again. We wanted to put forward some information about it and reviving previous discussions that we've had about the Youth Service Bureau in town, which is currently housed under Parks and Rec. And instead expanding our language under Human Services to be more inclusive of youth and even to be specific by suggesting the Youth Service Bureau be under Human Services.
Loretta, do what you do that, and Brenda, maybe you could answer. So currently it's under the rec department right now,
Yes,
so that if this commission decided that they wanted to bring back, lack of a better term, or co-sponsoring it, would we, I would sound like should we have talks with the recreation department?
Right, I don't know that, I think that discussions may not necessarily, I think this is a bigger issue than us.
Yeah, right.
So this
Okay,
is,
so
this
it's
is,
above the rec, okay.
this is putting forward suggestions to the town charter, but it really is a town decision for the executive team of the
Yeah.
town to decide how do they want to structure,
But I mean, I'm
And
just
there's-
wondering how the rec department would react to it. I
Yeah.
mean, would
Well,
they?
right?
They may or may not feel comfortable with that.
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting is I don't like
we gonna be-
confrontation.
Are we gonna be overstepping our bounds?
Well, I mean, even putting that aside, I'm just trying to see which is the kind of the nice way to do this. Is it to sit down in a casual, informal thing with the rec department to get their feeling? Or do we already know?
We've already done that. We've had.
And so what is their feeling that they feel
They
very,
like the youth service bureau under their department.
okay, so they feel very strongly that it's them and not us.
Right, so this is basically, it's putting forward ideas. We're not prescribing anything. We have no authority or any say so whatsoever, but it's really just saying that this is something that if our commission, this is how my thought is. If our commission believes that this is something that we think should be explored by the town, then we're putting this forward and we're saying it, that we think that this is something we want the town to consider. We're not able to decide, certainly. I don't think the town charter commission is either. I think it's an executive decision, but it's giving a voice to our commission about what our thoughts are in this discussion.
So they at least open, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I think the first selectman is very interested in
Right, this
looking
is-
at the whole picture.
There's
Oh,
several
okay.
things. So it's more than just the youth service bureau. There's Fairfield Cares and there's several different parts of town, and really, I think that they're looking at this more broadly than just the youth service bureau, but it's letting us, this could be an opportunity for us to say where the Human Services Commission, which would be the commission that that is involved with the department that would have youth service bureau if we were to come here.
So,
And it's saying what our opinion is.
But I mean, if we, short of having to get a charter revision, is there a way that the rec department would at least be open to suggestions from this commission?
I mean,
I
could
don't
we,
know that that's-
could we invite someone from, who is at some level at the Youth Services Bureau to come and speak with us
We've
about it?
done that, and it
They
didn't
did
go very
last-
far.
Yeah,
The
they did
questions that
that.
we had
last
weren't
year.
answered. When we asked those questions, he said, I can't answer those questions. So I think it's an executive decision. I don't think that my feeling is that we're past what does the Parks and Rec think and it's just, this is what it is, and the executive team needs to assess and make a plan based on the town's needs. Looking not just at the youth service bureau, but looking at all the programs in town that service youth. And
And didn't the first selectman say he wanted to start a new youth bureau?
Yeah, he had asked me a long time ago to kind of look at how other towns do it. And so I put a presentation together for him, just kind of looking at how different towns look at it, how they work with youth, or because you have the recreation part and you have the mental health part. And are we meeting all those needs as a community?
Right.
And so I think he's interested in looking at that.
Yeah, and I think from the conversation we had earlier with Julie, she was saying he wanted to get more settled in. And then, it is something that we should be looking at.
Right, but I would agree. I think this commission could play a strong role, not necessarily saying where it should sit, but getting out there what the needs are for the youth and looking at both the mental health and the recreation part.
So the question there would be next steps in terms of moving this, or at least to explore it further. To determine whether this makes logical sense or not. But I propose maybe we talk with Julie about that when she comes back and get some of her input as well. But I know it's something that has been on the agenda before. And again, what I had been told when I had asked about it was, he's new and he's definitely interested in pursuing this to whatever extent remains to be seen. But, I guess he's looking for a little more time before we.
well, that was a while ago, because I've
that
also
was a while
spoken
ago.
with him and have
Yeah.
also shared information from other from other,
And for your conversations with him,
I haven't had a conversation in the very recent past about where he is now.
Okay.
But I know it's something that he's considering. I think that,
yeah, I know that
I
as well.
think that if we were I agree with Cheryl, that if we as a commission would like to see youth and youth mental health be under our town social services, that this is an opportunity for us to share our perspective with the selectmen, to hear what our thoughts are. The Town Charter Commission is an opportunity to share it because it's part of the structure of the town, so it could be tool roles. We could have one, could be a memo to the selectmen.
Right.
And the other can be a draft to the Town Charter Commission. And Cheryl, if this is an option, is that maybe Cheryl and I could sit down together and work on some language and present it to the committee, similar to how we did for Herb, is put forward questions to precipitate to prep for this discussion.
Mhm.
We could do something similar and put it forward to the,
Commission, yeah.
Be more than happy.
Would you?
Yeah, sure.
okay, that would be great.
Yeah, and then I think share with Julie, and then we determine as a commission where to go with it.
That sounds great.
Okay, good,
Okay.
very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Anything else?
Katrina, did you want to work with us on that?
Yes, and I said thank you. I appreciate you, volunteering to do that. Yes,
You would like to,
Definitely.
so you would like to join us, like the three of us?
yes,
You've also got the background there. That would be wonderful.
thank you.
Any other new business? Move on to old business, Veterans Resource Subcommittee, Joe.
Just to, I've spoken to I think our last meeting about, we have new service officers, veteran service officers that are at the Bigelow Center. And we've made arrangements for one of them to speak at our next meeting on September 26th. Erin Harris said that she would come. So she is all set to come and discuss what it is that they do. And then we can discuss what it is we could do to probably help them out.
Great.
So she has penciled us in.
Okay.
Which is September, right? We don't
Yeah,
have
this
it
is,
all
we're
this
not, as far as we know, we were talking about it before, there should be no August meeting, so I believe it's September. Okay, and Carolyn, Board of Health?
In terms of seniors, no, there was nothing that we needed to, that was brought up. One thing was poor Sands had COVID. He had just come back from a vacation, he had COVID. And when I checked in with him today, now his wife was not well. But the main thing that went on is that the school nurse, the head of the school nurses is retiring. And that is kind of really sad for the town because she was so good. I mean, I do a lot of stuff, you all do a lot of stuff, but this woman, she kept everything going. And when you have all these schools and everything, I'm just kind of like her advocate. But she is retiring. And to me, that was, the really bad, not bad, but a good thing for her. But now they have to go through the whole process of getting a head nurse for the entire school system. And I think that's really a tough job. But in terms of seniors, no.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. Hopefully we'll find somebody that'll be AARP age friendly, Joe?
The task force for age friendly, our last meeting was on July 8th at the Bigelow Center. I think Herb gave a good thing about where we are on affordable housing, that being one of the, housing being one of the domains of the age friendly. Brenda had given her update as far as where we are with social participation. One thing that came out, and I thought, Brenda, that there was some talk that perhaps there was going to be some update on the age-friendly project with the RTM committees in August.
Yes, Yep.
Is that,
It's still,
is that still,
John will be,
is
yeah,
that
it's
still
still
on?
set. It's August, what's the date, John? I don't have the date.
19th.
August 19th?
okay, great.
Yeah, August 19th. John is going to be presenting a brief summary of Age Friendly as a whole and the domains we're working on.
Great.
Want to add anything to that, John?
That'd be great exposure with the RTM members as far as where we are, et cetera. With respect to the transportation domain, I think that at least the people that I've been working with on that wish, it's still an issue we're looking into. There's a new head of the Greater Bridgeport Transit Group that we'd like to meet with to discuss some of the points we've talked about before. And also, as I think I mentioned at the last meeting, the woman who Julie had arranged, Sarah Roy of Connecticut Rides, had come to one of our meetings and she was very good. And so I think we'd still like to talk to her and arrange meetings with her if we can in the near future. Are we going to have a meeting in August or are we going to, for the task force? Or
No, I
that will be
think,
September?
I don't think we
September
scheduled one.
26th.
Well, the
September.
26th is our meeting.
Well, that's the.
Well, no, I'm talking
hearing.
about the task force meeting, because one of the things Irv had brought up, which I think is important, is especially with the housing domain, if we could recruit some people, whether it's from this committee or people who we may think would be interested in housing, that this is a domain that we could really use some help on. So kind of think about it and see if, you have some thoughts, because it sounds like some of the people here do have good ideas as far as what we could be doing on that particular domain. So with that, Marty, I think that's about it. I think if we don't have a task force meeting in August, probably have one in September, and we'll get the update from the RTM meeting as far as where we stand. So
Yeah.
I don't know,
we're not-
Brenda, if there's anything with social
Yeah, we're
participation.
not, the task force is not meeting in August and we'll meet again in September. I don't have that date in front of me. But the age social participation and engagement, I mean, is going well. We're meeting again in a couple of weeks to just put down on paper some of the things we've been working on, some exciting things we've that are working on, so it's going well. That domain is going well.
That completes your department update.
Well, that was just age friendly, but I'll do department update as well. Things are going well. August is our registration for our fall semester of classes. We're excited. We've added a few new classes. Things are going well. As mentioned earlier, in September, we'll be having an aging in place resource fair, which we're all really excited about, just and vendors, organizations, companies that can help people age, in their home and stay in their home.
Good.
Longer and safer. So more information to come on that. But to save the date, it's Thursday, September 26th or 26th from 5 to 7 at the Bigelow Center.
Okay, so it's gonna be right after our meeting.
Yes, exactly. We did plan it that way.
Yeah.
Now it's going to.
Good. How is the, I don't know if you have any information on this, how the new recreation equipment outside is doing?
It's great.
Are
Yeah,
people
lots-
using it?
They are.
Oh, that's great. It's
They are.
fantastic. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, no, that's
Thanks.
wonderful. Any other information?
That's all I have.
So again, our next meeting is gonna be Thursday, September 26th. I'm assuming is it gonna be here? Do we know?
They'll all be here from now
We'll
on.
be here, okay. And then we'll center after that.
That's where I told people, the veterans, that they're coming here, so.
Well, that
Can I
worked
just have
anyway.
one thing, I just want to again, just remind the folks that the Friends of the Bigelow Center are having their annual cocktail party on Wednesday, September 4th, from 5 to 7, Penfield 2. So if any of you can attend, it'd be great. A few of us had attended last year and it was very well done. And so if you have a chance, please come.
Thanks for mentioning that.
Thank you. Anything else regard to good welfare? I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, I appreciate it. Any seconds? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you very much and have a great
Thank you
August.
all.
Okay, thank you.